Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey there, good morning to you. It's the 20th of November. As time keeps on marching. Jeez. Nothing you can do about that. Guys, I can't. I can't any more than you can. I really can't read the paper anymore. I do force myself to read certain things, but it is nothing you want to trouble your pretty little heads with. It's worse than you could have imagined. Pay it no mind. Not to say that you're going to, not be there when necessary, but I can assure you, it is not necessary to ingest the news on a regular basis. It really is not. And yet, I, by habit, by interest, by just my constitution, I feel a need to. But man, even I cannot. I can't. I look at the headlines and I find them sufficiently appalling so that I just don't want to, pile on. So I'm just telling you, in some respects, I might be less informed than I have in the past, but look where being informed got us. So maybe the way to reclaim our a position where people might vote for us again more readily, we should do what the winning party does, which is, I don't know, dumb down. You can't make up the cabinet that that he's assembling. You couldn't, in some silly, stoned, drunken parlor game, people could not have come up with. Why, Jesus, it just keeps coming. I mean, the there's two groups in particular that I just have to say a few things about, because it is, I don't know how anyone could defend these choices. I don't know how anyone could, let alone sign off on them, as one can only assume the United States Senate, in its constitutional duties to do so, now filled with cowards, formerly called Republicans, will, sign off. Except perhaps they're saying maybe Gates won't get through. But when you have people appointed to be in charge of the huge apparatus of our national security, from our military to our intelligence community and all of the agencies that encompasses, to Homeland Security, all of that, and you hand it over to people who themselves could probably not pass a very low-level security check. It's mind-boggling. And one of the things I did read today was that one of the things that a president-elect and and I use the pronoun because that's the right one, and his team uh, are expected to do, and this is the way they have always operated, of course, except now because we have you know who in, and he doesn't believe in doing things the way you're supposed to do them. But what is supposed to happen is that the president elect and his entire transition team, uh, they are supposed to sign uh, pledges, uh, ethical ethical pledges, saying that they're not going to have conflicts of interest, that they are going to follow the law, and blah blah blah. And this is like just normal transition behavior throughout our modern history. And then these pledges are sent up to the General Services Administration that has the responsibility of sort of coordinating the transition, the General Services Administration. Well, the GSA has gotten nothing from Trump. Um, and yet, they're the ones who have the job of actually turning over each agency of the government to whoever is outgoing and to whoever is incoming. And rules are supposed to be followed, and they're not following any of them. None of them. And because of this, what normally would be happening now is that members of his team would be being briefed, high level briefings, national security briefings, to make, again, a more seamless transition and one that will secure the national security. And his team cannot be briefed because they haven't done the most rudimentary first step stuff that they have to do to secure a security briefing. So anyone around him right now uh, is not to be told what's going on in the government. He has been receiving intelligence briefings because I guess as the president-elect and having been the president before, they are talking to him, and he's sleeping through them again, I'm sure. But the transition team can't even use the secure email servers. Is that stopping them from communicating? Oh no. They're on unsecure servers. They're calling heads of state on unsecured lines. Our the intelligence services of our enemies are just, I mean, going gangbusters with this just open window into what's happening in the upcoming administration. And normally the FBI is very much involved in vetting the new administration's choices for cabinet level positions. That's just the way it's always worked. Who's doing it for Trump? A few, billionaires and cronies, and a Palm Springs lawyer, not Palm Springs, Palm Beach, excuse me, get on the right coast here. Palm Beach lawyer near Mar-a-Lago, who Trump knows and who has represented in court a number of the January 6 insurrectionists. So instead of the FBI, you've got Stanley Woodward. You can't make it up. So having Putin-loving, Bashar al-Assad-loving Tulsi Gabbard as director of national intelligence, and potentially Matt Gaetz as the attorney general, and this idiot from Fox, this sexual abuser. How many of these guys have been charged with sexual abuse? It's like every other one. Wow. So, I mean, I hear myself sort of laughing. I'm not laughing. It's you know how laughter is sometimes a nervous reaction to fear. Yeah, and of course, having Dr. Oz report from his perch overseeing health insurance for hundreds of millions of people, I would imagine. Well, maybe not hundreds, tens of millions of people, all old Americans, Medicare, Medicaid, Affordable Care Act, anyone on any of those government programs. I don't know about you, but I am. Can sleep better at night knowing that Dr. Oz, with no administrative experience at all, who touted what was that drug he touted for COVID? Hexachloroquine, whatever it was. It wasn't any good. Yeah, so he'll be overseeing all of that and reporting to, above him, sitting above him, the clearly, well, he's even admitted, the guy with the worm eating his brain, who thinks vaccines are dangerous, and he will be heading our health. Again, do you think when they make these choices that they're laughing? I mean, is it like this evil laughter? Ha ha! How about this? We'll have Dr. Oz take over, yeah, in charge of that huge operation that Americans, depend on for their health insurance, and he'll report to a guy who doesn't believe in medicine, but who cuts heads off whales and plants dead bears in Central Park and has a worm eating his brain. What could be more perfect? Okay. I know this is all old news, but you realize I've not even spoken of it yet, I don't think, because it's taken me that long to even be able to utter a word or two. E1 says, let's talk about food since a lot of us will be consuming it. I'm starting my weight gain. I always gain weight at this time of year, almost in advance of all the feasting. I start eating more. I just become ravenous. And as somebody who has just lost about 25 pounds, I don't wanna. And yet I sort of like in excerpts, like, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I find myself, like wandering into the kitchen, craze to stuff more things in my mouth. Oh, it drives me crazy. No, I don't want to talk about food. Wonderful food. Hey, can somebody tell me if this is true or not? And again, because I don't get the usual sources for news, and I don't read the PG. I don't watch the local TV news. I just, I'm driving blind. Um, but I saw on social media on Threads. That's what I do instead of Twitter. On Threads, I saw somebody say that Jay Leno, just tell me if this is true or not, that Jay Leno was here in Pittsburgh on Saturday and he had a show here Saturday night, but that Saturday day he somehow fell down. I think he called it a 60-foot hill, encountered rocks on his way down, broke his wrist, battered his face and eye. And then I saw a picture of him a video of him being interviewed on, one of those like Inside Edition or something. And his face was just half his face was just black and blue, and he had a cast on his arm. And that the little bit I saw said that after falling down this Pittsburgh hill, unnamed, I don't know what hill he fell down, God knows there's plenty of them, or what happened that he would fall down one of our hills, but he was clearly injured. And then he went on and did the show. Can somebody tell me if this happened? Isn't it awful to be in a situation now where you see things on news sources and your first reaction is, I wonder if it's true? That's where we are. Didn't used to be that way. Oh dear, Milton. I see what you have sent, and my blood runs cold. Milton has sent something. Oh, wait, let me just see. Margaret says that is a true story about Jay Leno. Well, but I'm curious. So, where was he, and how do you fall down the hill? I mean, and this is a guy, didn't he just almost set himself on, blow himself up or something? I mean, he's like, I feel like I am accident prone. And some of that has to do with the fact of my foot and my balance is bad. So yeah, I do tend to, maybe I'm a fall risk. But I've lived in Pittsburgh for, most of my life, and I've managed never to fall down one of the hills. And there's lots of them. So I'm just asking. Anyone with more information, I'm curious. Milton has sent this. Oh God. Okay, Milton has sent this in response to my asking. When they're making these choices that they've made for Trump's cabinet, is it like done, just laughingly? Is it done with, with forethought, with serious, sober forethought that this is the way to destroy a government? And they're laughing at the brilliance of their choices. Here's Hannah Arendt in her from her book, The Origins of Totalitarianism. Totalitarianism in power invariably replaces all first-rate talents, regardless of their sympathies, with those crackpots and fools whose lack of intelligence and creativity is still the best guarantee of their loyalty. Oh my God, there it is. Leave it to Milton to know exactly the correct response to my blathering. Yeah. But do you think Trump actually, he doesn't know this. I want to be a totalitarian, and what I do then is this. Is he just, it's his nature to know it? I mean, I just wonder. I don't think he's following a playbook because he doesn't read a book. I mean, how does he instinctively know? Well, we do know that he prizes loyalty above all else. Um, and that he certainly does not value expertise. Um, I don't know. I mean, even the people who aren't, making, when you hear that they've been chosen and you don't like totally lose it, are still dubious. Like he got this former congressman from Wisconsin to head, I forget what, transportation, I think. And but this guy is, he got his start as on a reality show before he got into politics. I mean, the same road as Trump. So many of these people, and like Linda McMahon, they come out of reality TV, out of and with and Oz. It's my and Fox News. It's wow. But there it is, Hannah. As Milton says, loyalty is the coin of the Trumpian realm. But Hannah Arendt, I'll read it again because there it is. Totalitarianism invariably replaces all first-rate talents with those crackpots and fools whose lack of intelligence and creativity is still the best guarantee of their loyalty. Yeah, there it is. Shit. Excuse me here while I excuse me for a minute. We don't have commercial breaks. We just have these breaks where I mutter, yeah, to myself for a little bit and rock back and forth, hugging myself. Um, it's yes, it's my on-air latibulating. That's our word, guys. Latibulate. Um, and Trump saying that he's going to, start these deportations on day one, declare a state of emergency. And I had just read, I think it was yesterday that I was railing about, our economy producing so many crap jobs, which are essentially delivery drivers, because we all sit in our houses and take in this kind of stuff that we used to go out to get. And so anything, everything your heart desires can be delivered, immediately. Um, and so our roads are clogged with trucks, and the jobs are jobs in these huge warehouses and distribution centers. I mean, I don't think most people ever think, it would take being uh, really, you know, being mindful and the speed with which our culture has us living does not allow for mindfulness, because mindfulness requires, yes, some quiet and thought, and we just don't do that anymore. But if we were mindful every time we purchase something online, and we were to, before, paying, before pushing the final button, if we were to think, now what will my pushing this button set in motion? How many people will have to jump and do this, that, and the other thing? And these are the jobs, though, that, you don't want that job. You don't want the job on the other end of our I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the proper way to say it. It's not like I can't think what I want to say, but I, you, none of us want that job. And in fact, they're trying to transition to have robots do the job. But so far, that's not going well because robots are good at some of it, but some of it actually requires human skills, like mindfulness. But you know who's doing these jobs? A lot of the jobs that keep this on-demand economy of ours running. The people Trump is going to deport. Yep, that's who. That's who. These distribution warehouses where you wouldn't want to work, they're filled with people who aren't documented, but are working their tails off and keeping our economy humming and our insatiable needs for instant gratification. And if they want to do the deportations, all they have to do is go to these huge distribution centers and round up probably 60% of the staff. And then where's all your stuff going to come from? I'm just asking. Because all of those people, those murderers and rapists and hordes of people, they are what is fueling this on-demand economy of ours. And they've been fueling it through Democratic administrations and Republican administrations. And everybody knows it. And they're sitting, these poor people, because they are often the companies that run these warehouses, and you know some of the names, often allow other companies to staff these warehouses. They outsource that nasty little job. It's a nasty little job because, well, it often requires hiring people who are undocumented. And while nobody says that's what they're doing, that's what they're doing. And so they employ, this is who they employ, people who have entered the country illegally, who are desperate for jobs. And when you have one of those insatiable desires to buy something immediately, and you push that final little button, well, chances are it is a poor, illegal, soon to be hunted down, hardworking human who will attempt to satisfy your desires. And the thing is, these are employees who, of course, can't complain. I read a piece recently about how there's one that is, notorious, and in fact, often doesn't pay the people. And what are they going to do if they don't get paid? Go to the authorities? No. So these poor folks, I, I mean, obviously, in order to be willing to see this mass deportation occur, you have to be a human being totally without empathy. Totally without empathy. Because when you think about it, it just breaks your heart. Something else I've been thinking about, this colonialist stuff that, they use against Israel so much. They're colonizers of the indigenous, never mind that Jews were totally indigenous there. But yes, colonizers, blah, 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 blah. This brilliant way of perceiving the world brought to you by the pointy-headed nitwit intellectuals of the left, the woke folk. Um, I keep waiting for these same guys, the pro-Palestinian students, talking about, this kind of stuff, to keep it, you know, okay, we'll accept that they might have a point here, but just keep it closer to home. I mean, why be, the fact is they're standing on appropriated ground. They are colonizers. And this is what I don't get about them. These passionate young folks spouting this crap. I mean, you can't find a stronger example of indigenous people being slaughtered and denied of their land by colonizers than what happened here and continues to happen. And I'm going to get to that because there's one community that is trying to start finally, hundreds and hundreds of years later, making reparations of sorts. But the reason I have such contempt for these young and older people, because they've been taught by their professors, is if this is the way you look at the world, and if it is so clear that the world is filled with those who take and those who have it taken from them, and one side are good victims and the other side are evil thieves and killers, I get how you can, yeah, I see it. But these students are, unless I guess they're Native American and or African American, so unless they were already here or their ancestors were brought here against their will to be enslaved, I don't see how you have any standing to point the finger at any other group for being colonizers when you're enjoying the fruits of your colonizing, including being able to make damn fools of yourselves, talking about a country and peoples a world away that you have obviously not enough information about. It's beyond me. So I read the other day and I was interested that in Palm Springs, California, which I inadvertently mentioned earlier, that the city council there has, after years of wrangling back and forth with a group of Black and Latino families whose neighborhood was essentially bulldozed. Now, stop and think. This is something that's happened here in Pittsburgh as well. Bulldozed during you can fill in the decade, the 1960s, when the pointy-headed nitwit intellectuals of that era, in their brilliance and top-down, never asking people on the bottom what would work for you. No, decreeing that we are going to wipe out your neighborhoods and replace them with wondrous commercial development that will bring jobs, right? They did it here in East Liberty, destroyed one of the most wonderful downtowns in the state in East Liberty. The Hill. And in Palm Springs, it was just this one little area, Section 14. But it's, of course, where the poor people lived, because that's the neighborhood you can bulldoze, because poor people don't have power. And these people were, their homes, their neighborhoods, their businesses mowed down. And they have been trying for 50, 60 years. So the people who suffered this are mostly dead. Some are alive. But they're finally going to get a small measure of reparation. Because the city has agreed, and it's paltry, I'm sorry, $6 million settlement. And in order to get it, you have to be able to prove that you lost your land. You have to be verified that you are a descendant of people who lost their land. And they figure there's probably about 300 people, but not all of them will meet the qualification. So even let's say it's 200 and you divide, the 6 million with that, it's still not that great, but it's something. And the city has also set aside $20 million to be spent over the next 10 years on affordable home ownership for descendants of this area that was bulldozed, and also have established a community land trust to which these people would receive priority access. Now, again, it's too little, too late, but it's almost unheard of. Why wouldn't the kids on campuses all over the country be working on something like this? People in their own communities who have been harmed by, in this context, they love to stick everything in, the haves and the have-nots. When you could affect real change and be right where the aggrieved are. Why aren't they doing that? I would join them in that. That they could have some real power. Just saying. So, hey, I want to note something that I read and I haven't said anything about, and it has to do with local media, and that the long serving anchor at WPXI TV, David Johnson, has announced he will be leaving. And I want to just say this about him, because I know him. He is one of the nicest human beings in the universe. He is a mensch. He is a true wonderful person. Um, he's a giver, not a taker. He's a wonderful husband, wonderful father, wonderful grandfather, friend, member of the community of my synagogue. He is just all around good guy. And he has held that job longer. You know, most people just never stay in one position that long, and he's managed to. And I'm sure he'd still be doing it, except that um, his grandchildren are now living in Italy by virtue of the fact that their parents have moved into Italy, and they had been here. And yeah, these are we're talking about David and his incredible wife Nancy as first time grandparents, and damn, I'm sorry, the job is of doesn't come close to. So I think they want to be able to leave and stay gone for long periods of time. So I think the grandchildren, again, he made the right choice. Um, so I just want to say, just such a fine human. Um, Also, they often they took in waifs and strays for Jewish holidays. So, you know, those of us who don't have family here for holidays like Passover and Rosh Hashanah, they would invite me and my son, and I just generous, good people. Just want to say. And he once told me the funniest story. When he was dating Nancy, um, this was before they came to Pittsburgh, but and Nancy is Jewish. You know Nancy from WQED mostly, I think. Nancy Polinsky Johnson. She also a career in television, and she was also the publisher of Shady Avenue magazine up until recently. And he was dating her, and I guess it was this is how he was Christian, and but he ended up converting to Judaism. And like so many converts, he's a better Jew than a lot of the born Jews. And he told me, I hope this isn't an apocryphal tale, but it didn't seem to be at the time he told me. It seemed well too true. He said when he first met her family that, and he went to their home, he said there was, you know, he was sitting on the sofa and there was a coffee table. And on the coffee table, there was one of those, you know, coffee table books, you know, the kind of big book that is meant to be, I don't know, to sit there and gather dust. Um, he was struck by the title of the book. And as he remembered it, or I remember him remembering it to me, he said the title was, Yes, They Are Jews, or They Are Jewish. And when he said, I cracked up laughing, and he was laughing. And what to him was it was a welcome to being a Jew kind of a thing. That only in a Jewish home would there be such a book, where Jews would compile. I've never seen this book. Would compile a book of famous people who are Jews and would look at it with such pride. Look, did you know? Kirk Douglas, he's a Jew. Did you know? So it's a lot, because a lot of them obviously changed their names because you couldn't be who you were. And so I guess this book just had a compilation of them, and it is something that Jews know we do, um, because we are proud anytime one of our little tribe accomplishes success. So, but for David, this non-Jew at the time, it was like, what? Because you would never have a book. Yes, they are Methodists. Or you wouldn't have a book. Yes, they are black. Well, you could have one. Yes, they passed, I guess. But a very Jewish thing, and so sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just had a very dark thought. Forgive me. Speaking of Jews, yeah. Okay. The Jew hunt in Amsterdam that I didn't talk about, the thing that happened in Columbus, Ohio over the weekend, I guess. And I do want to say this, and if you don't know, it got a big story in the New York Times. That's how I know about it. And the headline is Ohio shocked by neo Nazi marchers. And first of all, I doubt that the headline is true. The whole state of Ohio. Oh, Mary is saying that I bet that's true. That'd be for the same kind of reason. Mary is saying it's a very gay thing to do, too, to like have a book. Yeah. Did you know they're gay? Right. That's right. Okay, so that is the corollary. And it comes from the same place, that it's a beleaguered minority that had to keep in its place and stay in a closet and not necessarily be known and identified for who they were. And so, of course, once you can celebrate, you do, and you have coffee table books. So this thing that shocked Ohio supposedly, um, it turns out what it was they say a group of marchers appeared to number only about a dozen people. Okay, now stop right there. I always, when I was a reporter, I was not good at estimating crowd size. But if I came on a protest where there were fewer than, I don't know, pick a number, fewer than 20 people, I'd count them. I wouldn't have a sentence like appeared to number only about a dozen. That's 12. A 2-year-old can count to 12, some of them. A precocious 2-year-old can count to 12. So how does a New York Times reporter equivocate with only about a dozen? Okay, so let's just say there were, if they're not even able to say it's a dozen, let's say there were 11 friggin' Nazis marching in Columbus, screaming god awful things about Black people and Jews, okay? And carrying swastikas. So the reason how should that be big news? I really have a problem with this. How is that? How do you give them what they want? They could muster only 11 Nazis, faces masked. And then the reporter says right here, they want to create fear and anxiety and get a photo op. Well, so, hey, New York Times, who's aiding and abetting this apparently only about a dozen Nazi people shouting this stuff? Who would even know? A few people who had unhappily happened to be on the street they were walking down, but who would know? And I am sorry, but unless I'm not saying I would not cover it, people need to know that these people are, yeah, and we are aware, right? But when it's a paltry thing like that, why enhance it so those idiots end up with this huge story in the friggin' New York Times? The governor decries it, everybody decries it, and they accomplish what they want. They empower more hate. They do scare people. They allow politicians to say, well, that's not representative of who we are. It's not a place for hate. You know? Bullshit. Unless they manage to pull out, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, I wouldn't give them the time of day. I understand this is a sticky issue in the news biz. But if their desire is to get a photo op, then why give it to them? Milton, who lives in Columbus, says it was about 10 guys who marched through a neighborhood akin to Carson Street at 1 p.m. during an Ohio State home game when no one was on the street. They were the laughing stock of all Columbus. Well, it wasn't a laughing stock here in the New York Times on Tuesday. A big, big headline and 5 columns. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Appeared to number only about a dozen. And the Times then couples that with another incident similar of Nazi demonstrators the week before. And this is even more appalling. Outside a community theater group production of The Diary of Anne Frank. So a play about a Nazi murdered child being taunted by current Nazis outside the theater. That took place in Howell, Michigan, which is described as I think it's a hotbed of white nationalism. And I don't know. And I know there's stickers that are showing up all over Squirrel Hill with vile things on them about Jews. And we need to know this. The people doing it need to be, but on the other hand, give them what they want, other than to give them anything but, if is possible, to arrest them for I don't know what, a hate crime, ethnic intimidation. We've got a First Amendment. They are allowed to make fools of themselves and march down an empty street pretending they're tough and ending up in the New York Times and saying that they shocked the state. Bullshit. Oh, God. It bears watching. I'm sorry, I realized I was quiet there for a long time. um, Colin, you're doing a show. You can't be off wandering in your own head. Jesus. God. Um, okay, wait a minute. Mary writes, what? Greensburg? What? This has to do with the Jay Leno thing. I am curious. Okay, let's say. Fell down a 60-foot hill on his way out for dinner. Uh, he had been staying at a Hampton Inn about 30 miles outside of Pittsburgh. Mary is saying it's in Greensburg. He took the tumble while he walked toward a restaurant close to the hotel, ahead of a performance he was doing nearby. Leno told TMZ he didn't have a car that night and that the route that the staff at the hotel had directed him on would have involved walking for about a mile and a half. So he decided to take a shortcut down a hill. He said he thought the hill doesn't look that steep. Let me see if I can, and then boom, boom, boom. I don't know. This brings up lots of questions in my mind. No pun intended, but how have the mighty fallen? Jay Leno in a Hampton Inn and without a car, walking a mile and a half to a show? What? I mean, that strikes me as odd. One of those things that raises more questions than it answers. But Mary, thank you. I was curious. All right, you guys. Maybe we should do an entire show on who is people who are gay or people who are Jews. that you didn't know? We should do a whole damn show, because I still get blown away by people who are Jews. And I also want to say that both Jews and gays do have a tendency to claim people that might themselves say, well, I don't really identify as. But that great line that I told you about Judaism is not a religion like other religions that you can leave. You know, you can say, I left the Catholic Church. You cannot leave Judaism. You can't. Ask Hitler. Ask any anti-Semite. You cannot leave it. And as one wag said, it's the Hotel California of religions. Yeah. Yeah, Milton says, so the Hampton Inn in Greensburg doesn't have a courtesy vehicle? Apparently not. None of it makes any sense. But boy, you can see he really got creamed. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you so much for joining me. I do appreciate it. And I'll be back tomorrow because I got nothing else to do.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.